So this is new.
The first set of bubbles, how do we use them? Tanking in Overwatch is a resource game. That being said, at least a third of Zarya is about your bubbles. The purpose of your first set of bubbles usually isn't to brute force your way through a choke. What you want to do with your initial set is pop them as quick as you can and come out with at least 40 energy. I know that sounds easier said than done, but here are some on-screen examples of how I use my first set. You can either bubble yourself first or your other tank. The order doesn't really matter. Choke points are usually flooded with 6 players shooting one direction, so just bubble yourself there and don't overstay.
That's not a great example of it, the concept. So he's right.
Doesn't really matter. Choke points are usually flooded with 6 players shooting one.
So you generally have a time to do. My cat's gonna step on my thing. Hang on. I want to step on my power button. So yeah, he's right about the first set of bubbles usually being able to be used before the fight actually starts. But this is Control Center Lijiang Tower. This is one of the few maps where you do not want to do a set of bubbles for charge. Koth in general. Like, look at this. These are decent bubbles.
There and don't
but he's getting space out of it too. You guys see that? So that's not a good visual example. Come on, Yeatle. We're better than this.
You're welcome. If done correctly, you should be ready to dish out some damage. First set done, now what? Very important, if you're not charged, play Frontline until you are charged. Skipping this step will only make things harder since you're doing less damage in the Battle Mercy. Also know the faster you get it out of the way, the sooner you can make an impact on the game. If you're charged and have bubbles, it's time to make a judgment call either during this cooldown rotation or the next. Are you winning the frontline fight? If you're man up or the enemy is backing up, then that probably means you are. Push the advantage and take off angles, but remember to play cover to cover, and keep an eye out for flanks because this is when a smart off tank or DPS will look to make a hero play. That being said, if you're not winning the frontline over time, then use the next tank engage as an opportunity to go on the flank and get a pick or pull resources. It's very important when you...
I do like that he's talking about off angles Zarya when you're charged. A charged off angle Zarya is actually really strong. Like you just saw right there, just instantly murder Hanzo, and he's not even high charge yet.
Go for this, you use your team bubbles on frontline, but save your personal bubble to win a 1v1. More on how to win these 1v1s later in the tip section of this video, but for now, just know that if you're not winning the 1v1 because either the person's getting helped or you just suck, remember that you spend a lot of time getting that energy, so living is better than dying. So either commit to going deeper on the flank or run back to your team. It might feel like you're trolling being halfway into the enemy spawn, but trust me, nobody in the right mind wants the 1v1 in a high energy Zarya with bubbles, and if they send an angry mob after you, the longer they're chasing, the more space you're creating. If they're not chasing or things settle down, make sure you start applying pressure on the flank as soon as you can. Either start pulling resources again or start getting picks. These rules apply regardless of what your second tank is playing. Get charge, and if you're not winning the front line, then flank. You're basically a DPS with an extra health and a CC blocker, so play like one. Just remember to play cover to cover when you don't have bubbles because you won't always have a Reinhardt to bail you out. Farming and ultimates.
So that so far is very good. I like this so far. He's talking about like you use your charge, you use angles, especially if you're not winning the frontline war, use angles. This is good. This is really good. If more Zarya's experimented this, especially when the charge, it'd be good. My cat is sleeping on my computer now. All I see in mod chat, the Mr. Baggins used ad blocked term, crotch.
Now that we understand the general playstyle, I can talk to you a little bit more about how to play the and how to get victory royales with your ultimates. Pro tip, you don't always have to be on top of your Reinhardt. If playing the other side of the choke will give you free right clicks, go for it. Just make...
Do you see how much more impact this Zarya is having than being standing behind this Reinhardt shield? Now, obviously this kind of positioning would be more risky into a full dive comp, but as long as he's being very careful with his burst bubble, and as long as he's charged, he can murder anybody. Like in GOATS, Zarya was more of a threat to the backline than D.Va was, because she was more consistent with her damage output, and a right click could actually kill a Zen break, right? Not D.Va spam damage. So look for this stuff as Zarya. Yeah, Harblue is very good.
Make sure your healers can reasonably heal you, and or you can at least
he's just killing everybody.
With a bubble.
And you could still bubble your tanks. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, I need to stay with my tank to help my tank. You could still bubble your Reinhardt from an off angle. You get the same value. Like, obviously, walking in front of your Reinhardt and body blocking damage with personal bubble is a thing, but it's almost, you pull more attention away from your Reinhardt by murdering the enemy team's backline, or at least threatening them, and that will help your Reinhardt survive more, right? It's like, what's going to help your Reinhardt more? Bubbling him from the off angle and threatening backline and controlling the spam angle, or just staying behind your Reinhardt, letting the enemy team take the spam angle, they shoot your Reinhardt in the back, and then they're all spamming your Reinhardt and they're not even spamming you. That's not what you want.
You have Graviton Surge, now what? I said earlier, I'll say it again, Overwatch is a resource game. Don't expect follow-up, make it. There's nothing stopping you from making a quick 180 to see if your team's still there, but as an extra tip, put yourself in a position to grab from high ground, or the flank, and shoot right clicks into it. You can get a 6-man grab, and it's not going to matter.
This is a bad grab.
You don't have the damage. If it's a mirror match...
Why is this a bad grab, chat?
And shoot right clicks into it. You can get a 6...
Why is this a bad grab? Like, not okay grab, it's a bad grab. It's Yeatle. Grabbing tanks. Teams out there to follow. Yeah. Like, who can follow up on this? Let the tanks drop and grab the backline. Because then you don't even need your team's follow up. You can just murder the backline. Or, at the very least, the tanks will be close enough so that maybe you don't kill the backline, but then the tanks get murdered because they're pushing into your tanks without support. This is just a bad grab.
6-man grab, and it's not going to
There's no follow-up
matter if you don't have the damage. If it's a mirror matchup, try to wait out enemy bubbles or shields before going for a grab.
Like, he grabbed Dragon and barely got 2 kills out of the grab Dragon.
In most cases,
it's just terrible.
It's worth going for a solo grab if you know it'll win you the fight. Also, if you don't want to get your grabs eaten, consider checking out the video I did on that a while back. Special.
This is what I was talking about, by the way.
Win you the fight. Also, if you don't want to get your grabs eaten, consider.
By the way, solo and 2 grabs are completely 2-man grabs are fine. Always grab squishies and always grab 1 or 2 people. If you can get more than that, great, but you don't need to.
Consider checking out the video.
You see?
On that.
Look at that. There's your frontline pressure right there. There's your peel. And what are you gonna do? The Reinhardt pushes in to kill your team. Oh, Zarya, why are you there to body block with your personal bubble? Haha. Just kidding. You're on the flank, shooting Reinhardt in the back, and now he has to stop swinging and deal with you, helping your team. You understand?
A while back. Special cases, Zarya on defense and versus dive. In both of these cases, the win condition is still the same. You want to get charged as fast as possible, but you don't want the enemy to push off your lack of cooldowns. This is another scenario where you'll have to make a judgment call as to whether the enemy is still in poking phase or if they're about to go hard.
So chat, what he's saying is basically Zarya versus dive, or defense versus dive, is you want to use your bubbles to get charged, but if you use both bubbles and the enemy team is ready to dive, they will then dive, and then you can't bubble your backline to peel them, and you can't bubble yourself. And Zarya is actually very easy to dive if you don't have personal. She's very squishy. So it's like, I need to be charged, but also, I also need to not die because I don't have bubbles. So listen to what he says right here. It's very important.
This is another scenario where you'll have to make a judgment call as to whether the enemy is still in poking phase or if they're about to go hard. Zarya and snipers.
So if they're about to go hard, you need to save your bubbles. But if they're not about to hard, they're still in poking phase, you need to get charged. That's why Zarya versus dive versus high ground maps is bad. Well, not bad, but very, very bleh, okay? Because it's like you need to use your bubbles to get charged, but as soon as you use bubbles to get charged, then you get dove and you die. So it's like, she's iffy with that, right?
This is the hardest comp to play Zarya into. You can react to projectiles, but you have to predict hit scan, which can often result in you bubbling for little to no energy or just getting one-tapped.
Exactly. So he's saying easy to bubble for charge versus Hanzos and Junkrats and whatevers, but against a Widow, they could just choose to not click the button. Ashes, they could just choose to not click the button. That's where you have difficulty.
If you're not making any progress on the first life, just swap to literally any other tank. Tips and tricks. High ground. I didn't cover it too much, but high ground is OP. This isn't just a tip for Zarya, but in place.
Look at this, look at this, look at this. One right click and that's 100 damage on a break right there.
That you can reasonably get to. Clearing DPS off high ground is huge value.
Look at this, they're terrified. And the best part about it is you don't even have to stay here. You could get them low and then drop and murder them.
So if it gives you an angle to poke at the enemy.
Yes.
Rocket jumps. You're not a good Zarya if you're not actively using these. There's 3 ways you can go about using them. In some places, you can use them to get high grounds faster than
you
normally would. You could also use them to speedrun from spawn back to the battlefield. Or, if you're really advanced, in the heat of battle, you can bubble yourself and rocket jump to cover. This is actually very useful when you can't win a 1v1, or if half your team got Thanos and you want to save that average energy stat. There's also double rocket jumping. These aren't practical mid-fight, but in the case where you team wipe the enemies, taking an unexpected high ground could be high value for the upcoming poke phase. Speaking of 1v1s, save your bubbles for enemy abilities. I know this might sound obvious, but this is what wins you 1v1s or helps you escape to cover. If you don't have your bubble, then you probably shouldn't be 1v1ing unless it's free. The 1v1 combo. Aim for the toes, right click, then track. The right click slightly boops your enemy, making their strafe easier to predict, and their first shot slightly harder to hit. If you really catch an enemy off guard, you can throw in a melee right after the initial right click for maximum DPS. Left click to break shields, right click if it's about to break. That way, if a teammate breaks it, you'll get the splash damage, and if they don't, it'll burst down faster. Right click melee grabs for maximum AoE damage, but don't make this your must do. With all the AoE healing in the game, it can often be better just to beam down a target in the grab, then right click for the AoE burst. Hey, look at that. We made it to the outro. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're really cool, follow me on Twitch and tell me what you think.
Okay. I slammed so hard, I actually started the video again. It's a good video. It's a good video. I like that it's so succinct, straight to the point. It doesn't touch on every single aspect of Zarya, but it gets the most important ones, and it will set players for actively, like, improving the Zarya gameplay. So I liked it. That was good. You think it's worth to grab a Nano Rhine? I mean, it's okay. I don't know. It's not as good as like a Nano Genji because you can't. It's really hard to grab a Nano Rhine. Depends on the circumstance. Like I need a lot more information. You know, it's circumstantial.